Hey XRP family, this is Future XRP at the 5 Blairs here on X. I want to first say thank you so much to the 7,500 plus followers who have decided to learn with me and explore XRP and all of its potential in the coming new financial system. Thank you so much for liking and sharing and commenting and helping me get the word out on this new XRP Valuation Series at xrpvaluation.info. I just published it a few weeks ago, and man, I've been so amazed at how much the XRP community has engaged with the content. And so because of that, I thought it would be good to actually produce a series of videos going into the XRP series, answering the questions that you have, and just giving an overall picture of what the series tries to model, where the weaknesses are, where the strengths are, and also just to try to understand if it's possible that the series actually rightly frames where XRP is heading and even what the price would need to be in a new system. And so if you haven't heard about the series yet, it's here at XRP Valuation Series. It's a 6-part series that addresses a structural analysis of XRP as a bridge asset for institutional settlement. It's really important to understand that this series is a conditional analysis. That is, that if the conditions that the series lays out are met, then there is a financial mechanical answer to the question of what price XRP would need to be if it was adopted and used for the purposes described in the analysis. It's not just about those 6 articles, though. I want you to know that on this website you can also play with the market calculator. It allows you to adjust the variables to see what price XRP would need to be based on the variables and dynamics you think are most likely to be the case when XRP or if XRP is adopted at scale for institutions. There's also the settlement terminal, and that gives you real-time estimated flows for XRP on the XRPL. It also gives you a Nostro displacement model, which is really cool. And it gives you a real-time max peak ticket number that describes what the max amount of a single peak ticket flow could be right now based on its price and other variables. That's not all, though. The series is complete, but the framework is not frozen. That means that the living framework was necessary because information develops and unfolds in real time. And so right now there's 13 field notes on this living framework that basically look at the series as it is and gives real-time analysis or updates based on information as it comes in. At the very bottom also, if you want to just enjoy a thought experiment, there are 3 observatory articles that actually go just outside of the framework to explore XRP at a theoretical level, and these are just fun thought experiments that may or may not come to be. So I highly recommend you checking out the page. If it's very long, it's very detailed, it's very lengthy. And so I encourage you to use Claude, ChatGPT, Grok, whatever your favorite LLM is, to help kind of work through the details. Stress test it. See where it's wrong. See where its assumptions are off. I welcome that. I've done that over the last several weeks myself. I also want to make sure everyone knows that all these articles are based on my theses, my questions, my arguments, and my revisions, but Claude wrote them, and Grok and ChatGPT, as well as Meta and Gemini, helped me stress test it. Now, many people have asked me, how did this series come about? I want you to know that, first of all, that this series began as a question a retail investor, me, couldn't find satisfying answers to. I am not a financial professional. I have no affiliation with Ripple whatsoever, or with any entity with a financial interest in XRP. I just set out to try to understand what I owned, found the existing literature incomplete, and decided to do the work of discovering the answers for myself. That's how this series came about. Now, I heard about XRP 2-3 years ago now on a Facebook post. I hadn't heard about it before. I was interested in the technology, and so I began to kind of do a deep dive into what XRP is, and is this something that I need to be invested in myself? Of course, like any retail investor, I wanted to know, is there any return on this investment? And so I began to dive in. Well, what I discovered is that when I tried to understand how XRP might fit into the new system, I realized that I was running into real objections along the way. You know, X is an interesting place. You can put out an idea, and immediately there are 2, 3, 4, or 10 counter arguments to why your idea isn't right. And so I began to run into these walls. I learned about things like netting that I had not heard about before. I learned about theoretical maximum velocity for XRP and how that might keep the price of XRP very low because you can turn over a whole bunch of XRP every year. I ran into these walls that I thought, oh my goodness, I don't even know, if I should be holding XRP. And I got to be honest, that there were days where I wasn't even sure the asset was worth holding on to. So all that led me to do the deep dive to try to figure out, is XRP something that I want to continue to invest in? Of course, the answer is yes, and that's really how this series came about. I want to take just a minute to help you understand, if you don't already know, what the framework of the series is about. And then over the next several videos, I'm going to unpack in great detail the framework itself, how it fits together, what the conditional pieces are, what are the contingencies, and what are the scenarios that could play out. But just for starters, this slippage tolerance picture is a really powerful picture of the framework itself. I mentioned that there was this theory that I was interested in, and it's called the quantity theory of money. It's based on MV equals PQ, and it's very popular here on X. But basically, that theory addresses the average flow of XRP in any given year, or the average value that will move through XRP in any given year. And that theory, or that formula, addresses how large the pipe needs to be, or what price XRP needs to be to move the total annual flow of value. But that talks about the average flow. Think BBs and golf balls through the pipe. Well, the theory is limited because it does not address what's called bowling balls in this theory that I've developed or published. What is a bowling ball? A bowling ball is a single peak ticket transaction that needs to move through the system while the BBs and the golf balls are moving through the system. If the pipe is sized for BBs and golf balls, then the bowling ball will not fit. And what that means in institutional financial terms is that there is a slippage tolerance level, which we'll talk about in detail, that if it is crossed, will fail the transaction and that value will not be able to move through the system. So the size of the pipe, or the liquidity depth, or the price of XRP needs to be sized not just for the average flow, but for the largest or most difficult flow that needs to move through the system. So over the next several videos, I'm going to unpack what that looks like. Are there irreducibly large single peak ticket value transfers that need to happen through XRP? Will institutions adopt XRP? And if so, what are the corridors? What is the place for XRP in the new system? I'm sure everyone knows this, but just so we're all clear, XRP is not going to move all the money and all the value in the new system. It will be a multi-chain system. Brad Garlinghouse has said this many times over, and it's absolutely true. And we'll see that in real time as this conversation continues. But XRP absolutely will play, in my opinion, a critical role in the new system. And we're going to talk about what that role is and what price XRP would need to be in order to handle those flows. So I hope you'll join me for the next several videos as we go into the details. For now, again, thank you so much for all of your comments, all of your critiques, all of your feedback. It is welcomed. And thanks again for sharing and helping us get the word out about this new series.